All right, we're back. We're gonna do a quick little MLB segment. Matt, you're the Met fan. I'm the Yankee fan.
Right.
Let's start off with the Mets because Sandy Alderson. He comes out the other day and he says he expects projecting. I don't know his exact language that he used. He said he wants to see 89 wins, which is one less win from last year.
Yeah, doesn't make much sense. The talent they had last year was 90, but this year we have 89. So go get them, guys. Yeah, interesting. Listen, right now as they're currently constituted, there's a lot of what ifs on this team, and what worries me the most is David Wright going to be David Wright? Is Curtis Granderson going to get back to 25, 30 home runs? Is Lucas Duda going to perform better against lefties and still hit 30 home runs like he did last year? Is Darno going to grow and not be injured again? What can we expect offensively out of Lagares? We know what he is defensively, one of the best center fielders in the game, but there's a lot of what ifs with the Mets, and that's what scares me the most. Because if everything hits on all cylinders with the Mets, Antonio, the Mets could be a very good team. I mean, they have the pitching rotation, they got a good bullpen. Um, I really right now this team to me, top of my head, I'm saying they're a 500 team. They're 81, maybe 82 wins. So really to get to that 89 win total that Alderson called for, a lot of things have to go right for the Mets. And the big thing I think is Wright, Granderson, and Goodire. I think really have to be that heart of the lineup, along with Duda. So I really think that a lot of things have to go right for them to get to that 89 win plateau.
I agree, and if they've got so many great pitchers, if they can stay healthy and you get the same year out of Lucas Duda, and Granderson doesn't start off in a huge slump again, I think they could potentially reach that 80 win mark and maybe even higher. But like you said, there are some questions. I think the biggest question on the team is probably at shortstop.
Oh, without a question.
Without a doubt, yeah, Wilmer Flores and Ruben Tejada seems to stick around every year, which kind of makes me laugh. But
He's got to get cut. I mean, I think the Mets really just need to kind of cut rope with this guy because not that he's a bad guy, but he kind of represents what Luis Castillo and Oliver Perez ended up being with the Mets. And they finally just cut bait with these guys. It's just kind of a bad reminder. It just keeps a bad taste in your mouth. And I was talking to my buddy the other day about it, and having this guy on this team, even competing for a spot, is a joke to me. I mean, I'd rather have Wilmer Flores go out there, and then you also have a young kid in the minor leagues, Matt Reynolds, who had a great AAA year last year in Las Vegas, who no one talks about. And the thing was that the Mets didn't even bring him up for a cup of coffee in September, which was kind of confusing to me. The guy hit over 330 last year in the minors. Not really much pop, but he's got a good glove and he can hit. And the Mets need some hitting, so I really don't get the logic behind that. But um, the Mets roster as currently constituted is not bad. They have some talent, but it really depends on if they have the years that they're supposed to have on the back of their baseball cards or not. Wright's not getting any younger. Granderson's not getting any younger. Godire's already 36. He hasn't played a full season since 2010. Lucas Duda finally had a breakout season last year, and we're going to see if it continues. The one thing that bothers me, though, is if Duda's going to be your cleanup hitter, but he's not going to play against lefties, so we're only going to have him as your cleanup hitter for part of the games or some of the games, and then you're going to have Kadire filling in. I want to have more of an established lineup. I understand some teams, the managers kind of like going into the games, filling out their roster kind of day by day, but I like having that more conventional set roster minus one or two players here or there, but taking your cleanup hitter out of the game, that's kind of a big deal going forward.
yeah, Terry Collins is definitely going to have his work cut out for him. I think this is definitely a make or break year for him. Just because we're up against the clock, I want to switch it over to the Yankees real quick. They made a couple moves in the offseason. For the most part, they retained their roster from last year. They lost Ichiro in the outfield. They signed Didi Gregorius to replace Derek Jeter. Everyone knows about that. I think this is, and they also re-signed Chase Headley, which is important because that means A-Rod doesn't have to play third base every day, which is a godsend. Um, but another almost the same question with the Yankees, maybe a little bit less because they got a little bit of a little more older players. It's more of a question of can they stay healthy. Guys like Teixeira, who hasn't played a full season and since I can remember. Brian McCann, he was a new acquisition for the Yankees, much like Granderson was for the Mets, and they both started out in major slumps. I think Ellsbury's going to have a good year next year. Gardner was, in my opinion, the MVP of the team last year, and no one expected that. And then, of course, the Yankees have their pitching concerns because CC hasn't been the same since 2009 when they won. Nova's coming off Tommy John. Tanaka's coming off a partially torn UCL, which, in my opinion, he should have had the Tommy John. And then guys like Pineda, who is, I have no word to describe Pineda after the pine tar thing, and then he sits out for like months, and then he comes back and pitches lights out. I can't get a gauge on that guy. And then they at the bottom of their rotation they got guys like Adam Warren and Chris Capuano. But what do you think about the what's their over? What do you put their over under? I'm putting it in that same range for the Mets, about 85 games, and I'm gonna hope for the best.
Yeah, I'd say the Yankees probably have, I would say probably 85, 86 wins. The reason I put them a little above the Mets is because they still have professional hitters on that team, and you're hoping for bounce back seasons, obviously, from Beltran, who was hurt last year as well. McCann, who, still had 23 home runs, even though despite a down year. Ellsbury had a good year from them, so they still have some good youth on that team with Gardner, with Ellsbury, with Gregorius now. Got a little bit better defensively, obviously, with Drew at second base and Gregorius at short. You know, if Teixeira can stay healthy, if you have Beltran staying healthy, they have some professional hitters on that team that are a little bit more sure bets. The one thing that if I'm a Yankee fan that I'd be concerned about would definitely be, like you hit on, the pitching staff, because you don't know what you're getting at Sabathia. He's obviously trending downwards. Although, guys like Messina and Pedro Martinez, who were, high fastball pitchers in their heyday, became more finesse pitchers later on in their career. So can Sabathia become that? Sure, and he'd still be a good, viable number 2 or 3 starter. But if Sabathia's trying to get back to that 96, 97 range that he was at, I think that's going to be a very big mistake on his part. Tanaka is one pitch away from being out the rest of the year, I personally feel.
Yeah.
That scares me if I'm a Yankee fan. Ivaldi is a nice pickup. I know you gave up Prado, which I didn't, if I'm a Yankee fan, I would have liked to kept Prado. He's more of a professional hitter, and he can play kind of all over the field, outfield and infield. But Ivaldi is still a young, hard-throwing kid. Had a high ERA with the Marlins last year, but maybe a new, scenery again will help him. And then you're filling out the rest of the rotation with Pineda and Capuano. I don't love it. I don't hate it. And then Nova's coming back after Tommy John probably by the middle of the season. I still think, the one big name that's still out there on the free agent market is James Shields, and he hasn't gotten that 5-year deal that he thought he was going to get. So is it impossible to think the Yankees could swoop in, maybe give him a lot of money for 2 or 3 years instead of that 5-year deal? Give him 25 for 2? Give him 50 for 2, 25 per.
I think he's looking for that security, which is what's pushing the Yankees and Brian Cashman away from that because of what they've seen in CC Sabathia, how he's eroded. But yeah, I personally, if I were Brian Cashman, I would stick with what you have, and hopefully, you can stay healthy because you stayed away from Scherzer. I think you got to stay away from Shields.
It's only a 2-year deal, 2 or 3-year deal. You still wouldn't go get Shields.
I think a 2-year deal I would do. I think he's I think he's like 33. Shields. He's in his early to mid 30s. Yeah.
Had a bad postseason, obviously, last year, but he still won 15 games for the Kansas City Royals. Had some big games for them down the stretch.
Mm-hmm.
And he's, believe it or not, they had a stat since like 2007. I think he's like third or fourth in innings pitched, like second or third in wins. He's pitched a lot of big games and has put up a lot of big numbers in that time. So he's definitely a good pitcher to have. Is he an ace? No, but is he a good top of the rotation guy to complement a guy like Tanaka? Absolutely, I feel.
Yeah, it remains to be seen. Going into spring training, there are a lot of questions, but I think that if the bottom line for the Yankees is if they stay healthy, they'll have the answers because they have the players. They've got guys with experience, like James Shields, like you mentioned before. 2 or 3-year deal would be great, but I haven't seen anything from him in big games. I think his ERA is like high when he pitches in the postseason, which would scare me. Not that the Yankees have made the postseason in recent years, but I think the bottom line for the Yankees is you got to stay healthy, and things will work out.
And see how the zoo of Alex Rodriguez arriving to camp, see how that unfolds. It's going to be interesting to see how he's welcomed back into the Yankees' great graces. And, if he's going to accept the role of DH, he's not a third baseman anymore. Chase Headley is obviously the third baseman. They signed him for 4 years for a reason. So let's see how A-Rod adapts to DH, and maybe that'll keep him healthy, And if you can get 20, 25 home runs out of him, I think any Yankee fan would sign up for that right now.
Yeah, that's another saga that's about to unfold. We're out of time for today. We're going to be back next Thursday, same time, 12 to 1 o'clock. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Have a good one.